Hey everybody, welcome back to the Muscle Intelligence Podcast. I'm your host, Pakulski. As always, we find the world's best guests to inspire you, to ultimately support you on this transformation journey, whether your goal is to build your body, to lose fat, or ultimately just thrive in every area of life. This podcast is going to support you on that journey. Today's guest, Drew Manning, is a very, very popular ketogenic coach, sometimes known as the fit to fat to fit guy. He's been on morning TV talk shows all around the world, inspiring people on his journey. So first he was very lean. He was a very, very fit and healthy guy. And some of his clients said, we just don't understand what it's like to be me. You don't understand how hard it is to lose fat. So Drew actually went and took it on his own to add about 60 pounds of fat. Just went through like the standard American diet for a very long time, added a bunch of fat, and then got really, really obese and went through the process of losing it again so that he could relate to his clients, so he can understand how it was to, first, how he felt carrying around literally like almost a half an extra person, to then losing it all and all the struggles that he would endure through that, the psychological challenges, the physiological challenges. And Drew shares his journey today and all of the amazing lessons he's learned along the way. Drew has made a really successful business for himself, teaching people ultimately how to get in the best shape of their life. And one of the things I love most about Drew is the fact that he's real. He's got kids. He's a family man with a business, and he truly is an inspirational person who's got a lot to share in this world. And I really enjoy connecting with Drew on today's podcast. Today's podcast is brought to you by our friends over at Optimizers, an incredibly long-time sponsor of this podcast, because they have amazing products that you continue to buy because they work. I think every one of my clients is certainly on mass Zymes. I take that consistently every day. I like to take a lot. I like to take 5 in the morning on an empty stomach and then 3 to 4 with each of my high protein containing meals. This really helps me extract the protein from the meat and the ultimate protein sources that I'm consuming, rather than just eating it and assuming that my body's going to utilize it. I want to make sure that my body can digest, absorb, and assimilate all these high cost proteins and high quality proteins that I'm consuming. It's not just about what you consume. It's about what your body can digest, absorb, and assimilate. So I highly suggest you head over to biooptimizers.com and use the code MUSCLE10 to get 10% off. That's BIOPTIMIZERS, biooptimizers.com. Use the code MUSCLE10. They've also got an incredible suite of incredible products, from P3OM to support digestion, K-PEX to support people on a ketogenic diet. And you guys all know how much of an incredible fan I am of their product, Magnesium Breakthrough, which is 7 different magnesium chelates. And they're also expanding their line consistently every year with research and doing incredible products. You guys get hooked up with 10% off all of their products. Head over to buyoptimizers.com and use the code MUSCLE10. Enjoy the podcast with my great buddy, Drew Manning. So you did this twice. As I did in 2010, and you did like the 10-year anniversary. You decided to do it again?
Yep, I did, man. It was kind of crazy. I swore I would never do it after the first one, to be honest with you. But things changed. 2020 happened, and I felt kind of called to do it a second time. So yeah, man, it was crazy. But once again, I was humbled. It was way harder than I thought it was going to be. Even though I thought it was going to be easier the second time around, it's not true.
Harder to lose the weight or add the weight?
Just harder mentally and emotionally. Not to gain the weight. Gaining the weight kind of came easy. Losing the weight was hard, but I feel like my knowledge or using, newer techniques or protocols to lose the weight, just because I'm, smarter than I was 10 years ago. Losing weight wasn't hard necessarily. It was hard mentally and emotionally, but it just like the emotional aspect of it. I went through a breakup during the middle of it. And that was really, really hard because it was unexpected, and that kind of threw me for a loop. But I had to finish the journey, even though I was struggling inside with those emotions of going through a hard breakup, right? So that's what made it 10 times worse. But yeah. I survived and I made it through. So
good for you, man. So
yeah,
the first time you did it, what inspired that? It was I just want to kind of relate to what my clients are feeling.
Yeah. So the first time I grew up in a family of 11 brothers and sisters, and we all played sports. And so my whole in life was, I knew what it was like to be in shape, and that's all I ever knew. It just came very easily for me. And then I had a client who was my brother-in-law at the time, and me and him would struggle with, I'm sure you've had clients like this that just, couldn't stay consistent. And for me at the time, I couldn't understand why he couldn't just follow the meal plans and do the workouts. Because for me, it was easy. But for him, it was really hard. And he kind of told me, he's like, Drew, you don't understand how hard it is for me or for people like me, because you think it's easy. And I would get frustrated with him because he would give me excuses. But when he said, you don't understand, I kind of took that to heart. I'm like, you know what? I don't understand why it's so hard for you. And then so I started thinking of ideas of, okay, how can I gain a better understanding? And for whatever reason, this idea of getting fat on purpose kind of just popped up in my head. And I felt once again called to do this experiment, if you will. And that's kind of what started that process of like, okay, I need to gain a better understanding to better relate to my clients. And that's how the first journey came to be.
Yeah. I'd love to walk through kind of what that looked like the first time and what you ate and what you did. And I think learning to understand someone else's perspective is one, it's very admirable for you to try to do that. And two, it's probably a very complex scenario, right? Everyone thinks so differently. Everyone's brain works so differently. Everyone has this whole set of, experiences and traumas that kind of lead to where they are now. And you definitely got to experience one aspect of it. And I think it's fun. I'd love to hear about it. So in the first time you stopped training for 6 months, just started kind of eating everything in sight.
Yeah, the idea was, no exercise for 6 months. And then I didn't want to do what Morgan Spurlock did, which was just focus on fast food. So I actually didn't do a ton of fast food because I think most of us understand that, okay, fast food is unhealthy for us. I wanted to focus on everyday, American foods that are super highly processed, that are cheap, affordable, convenient, and, taste really, really good. I'm not going to lie. The food did taste good. So food that we grew up with here in the United States in the 70s and 80s. So, sugary cereals, juices, granola bars, chips, cookies, crackers, sugary sodas, Hot Pockets, SpaghettiOs, top ramen, frozen foods, those kinds of things is what I ate most of the time.
So now, did you force feed yourself, Drew, or did you just kind of eat crappy foods? Like, were you intentionally like, I'm going to eat more than I want, or were you just eating crappy foods to satiety?
So once a week, I would do a food challenge for pure entertainment reasons for YouTube, right? So like once a week, I would do like a man versus food style food challenge at a restaurant or something like that. And that I definitely gorged myself and pushed myself. Every other day was I would eat until I was full. And then I would eat again when I was hungry again. And it just so happened that I probably, back in those days in 2011, I didn't really track my calories or macros, or I wish I did, but I just didn't back then. But if I had to estimate, it was probably around 5,000 to 6,000 calories a day, just because when you're eating these highly processed foods, you don't feel satiated for a long period of time. Like I could have a huge bowl of Cinnamon Toast Crunch, which was my favorite, by the way. I could have a huge bowl of that, but then an hour or two later, just be absolutely starving, right? And so I would eat 5-6 times a day, and it just those kinds of empty calories just added up, eating that processed food to where I was eating 5,000 to 6,000 calories. And for some people, they might be like, whoa, that's impossible. You must have like stuffed your face. But honestly, like, someone like me, with a good amount of lean muscle mass, that was an athlete, like I could throw some food down pretty easily, especially processed foods. And those calories add up pretty quickly.
Yeah. And did you notice your hunger signal changed over the 6 months? Like, did you find yourself getting more or less hungry as the time progressed, or was it pretty much the same the whole time?
No, the pain of hunger was more intense with these huge spikes in blood sugar levels and crashes. Because when I would get that crash, you feel jittery, you feel almost like you're dying, right? You don't feel very comfortable, and so your body's signaling you to get another spike in. It creates this vicious cycle of addiction and dependency on that. And so, before that, I was eating, 5 meals per day back in the day, not anymore. The hunger was still there, but it was more intense in between meals, where if I didn't eat, I felt like I was going to die. And so that's kind of the difference between the way I ate before and eating this way. Does that make sense?
Of course. Yeah, that's interesting. And so there's no awareness around like what you're eating. It's just like, I'm going to eat whatever I feel like. So there's no like protein content. It was just like, I'm just going to eat.
Yeah, I'm just going to eat. Yeah, whatever it was. Sometimes I would have like my audience kind of vote on what they wanted to see me eat. When I did it the second time, it was definitely more strategic. It was definitely more organized and structured. Like I did a little, some experiments with keto, paleo, vegan, vegetarian, but a dirty version of those. And so on the second journey in 2020, I would do a week-long experiment and do blood work before and after, kind of comparing a dirty keto versus dirty paleo, dirty vegan, dirty vegetarian, and kind of draw my blood to kind of see what the differences were between those diets. Just to kind of show that, hey, like, just because you're doing a certain diet doesn't mean that you're becoming healthier, or it doesn't necessarily mean that it is healthier for you. But on the first journey, I didn't really, track protein or macros or anything like that. It was just kind of like, eat whatever.
Yeah. And did you, on the first time, do health markers, pre and post, like blood markers?
Yes, I did. I had a doctor that would monitor me throughout the journey. And then when I went on Dr. Oz, he did some of his own blood work on me as well. And so, it's pretty much what you would expect, eating 5,000, 6,000 calories of processed foods, not exercising. I developed a non-alcoholic fatty liver that first journey. We talked about that on the Dr. Oz show. My blood pressure got up to 167 over 113. My testosterone dropped to the low 200s, and I was 30, 31 at the time. So that wasn't fun. And then obviously all my other, blood markers were in the red for the most part. I don't really have exact numbers on all of it, just because it was over 10 years ago. So. Mm-hmm.
And how long did it take afterwards to get those numbers back to in healthy range?
Yeah, actually it happened pretty quickly. Most of them returned within 30 days. And so what I did after eating that way for 6 months and then, going cold turkey, eating healthy food again, the first 30 days, I didn't actually exercise. I skipped exercise completely. I just stretched and walked and did a little bit of core work, just so I didn't rush back into, the gym and possibly injuring myself. I just kind of took it easy and just changed my diet. And within just those first 30 days, a lot of that stuff was reversed, into the green area of like my lipids, for example, and triglycerides and, glucose numbers. Those things kind of came back to normal pretty quickly. But then obviously over the next 5 months, lifting and exercising definitely improved them even more. So I've learned over the years that your body's pretty resilient. If you treat it right consistently, it can heal itself. Now, my journey of doing it for 6 months is not the same as someone that's been that way for 6 years or 10 years or 20 years, right? It's completely different. For them, it might take a lot longer to heal their body. For me, my body bounced back pretty quickly, probably because that's my like where I'm at most of the time. And that's kind of more like my homeostasis is, that's kind of where I fall in that area. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. Tell me about the second time. So I get it. You're called to do it again. So how are you gauging your fat gain or your weight gain? Were you trying to hit a certain amount per week, or were you just kind of eating? Like, what did it look like the second time?
Yeah, the second time around, I guess I should explain why, more about why I did it the second time. It was kind of, like I said, I felt called to do it, but it was kind of because 2020 happened. There was a lot of division in the world. And for me, my message ever since the first experience was, I developed a lot of empathy for those that struggle. For me, being in shape my entire life, it seemed so simple and easy until I did it. And then I was humbled and I totally changed my perspective about helping people transform and how easy we think it is. And especially in the fitness industry where we just, here's your macros, here's your calories, here's your workouts, here's your supplements, boom, 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 you do this and you get this body. And we've kind of tried to simplify it for people. But for me, the human experience, the mental and emotional side of transformation is so undervalued, underlooked in this industry where we don't really give it a lot of credit. We don't really let people don't feel understood when it comes to that side of it. And so I developed a ton of empathy. And so ever since that first experiment, my message or my goal is to bring more empathy into the fitness industry. And then when 2020 happened with all the division in the world, I felt like we needed more empathy than ever. And I thought, man, if I could do this again, where social media today, is totally different than what it was back in 2011. There was no live streaming. There was no TikToks. There was, no Insta stories. And not a lot of people saw it as it happened. They heard about it after the fact, right? And they didn't really get to experience it as I was doing it. So those were kind of like the main reasons of why I wanted to do it again. Also to show people that are in their 40s, I know you're over 40 and, I'm sure you hear people all the time like, oh, it's a lot harder for me now, or back in the day, it used to be so easy. And so I wanted to give that age demographic some hope and let them know that it's still possible. So that's kind of why I did it the second time. And what was your question? You asked something.
Did you do it kind of methodically as far as the weight gain?
Yes. This time around, I had so many. The first time around, to be totally honest with you, Ben, it was just me and my wife at the time, just filming stuff on my phone. I would upload it to YouTube and try to edit it. It was very, very poor production. This time around, obviously I had a team in place, a marketing team, and kind of structured it, and we kind of, made it more organized and more methodical. where, I was more strategic about what I ate and, how much of that food and tracking all of that and having a doctor do my blood work multiple times, just kind of show people the difference in those diets, right? That I mentioned. And that was only a week-long experiment. But this time around, I definitely tracked my calories, my macros every single day so that people could follow along and see exactly what I was eating. And I wasn't aiming for a certain number every day. Once again, I was just kind of telling people, hey, I'm eating till I'm full, and then I'll eat again when I'm hungry. And then once a week, I did do the food challenge thing, which sucks so bad. I know people find it so entertaining, but it's the most miserable thing because you'll do like a food challenge for 45 minutes. And then for the next 8 to 10 hours, you're like out of commission. You can't, function. You're just like laying down, super uncomfortable, in a lot of pain and discomfort. And so I kind of wish I didn't do that, but you know how it is. You're making content for people's is a hard thing sometimes. So
yeah. So tell me about the food challenges. What were you doing? Give me some examples.
Oh man. Like sometimes restaurants would come and invite me. Like I did the huge spaghetti challenge at this Italian place I went to a Korean chicken wing place that had all kinds of chicken wings. And I would just, it would be me and sometimes a couple of friends would show up and we kind of compete to see who could eat the most. As far as like official, like real food challenges, I can't think of anything where it was like an official food challenge except for the first.
Yeah. So what would that be? Give me an example of when you did the spaghetti, the chicken wings, what else?
Yeah. For my vegan week, I did Oreos, like how many Oreos I could eat.
How much you get?
I can't remember. I have to go back and look at the YouTube video. Not a lot. It wasn't very impressive. I'll be totally honest with you. I want to say like 20 or 30, and you know how many calories are in Oreos.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then paleo week was a little healthier. It was steak and mashed or baked potatoes, as many as I could eat. But, let's see, what were some other crazy ones that I did? I can't think of any other ones right now, but yeah, it's just crazy stuff like that.
And so now that you're kind of back to normal, do you typically do cheat days? Do you do like, what's your favorite cheat food? That kind of stuff?
Man, my thing is pizza. I could eat pizza every single day if I could, and I'm sure I could, but I just choose not to. I really don't have cheat days necessarily. I'm not super strategic about all that now. I used to be very, very strict. As I've gotten older, I feel like, doing a lot of inner work on myself, working on my ego, letting go of my ego, and just kind of like realizing that there's more to life than just being super lean and super fit. I'm not as strict as I used to be. And so, as far as like having structured cheat days or scheduled cheat days, I kind of just live more in the moment right now. Right now, currently I'm doing a 30-day challenge. So I am kind of like on a strict diet again, where I am following a certain protocol, but that doesn't happen as often as it used to be, just because over the years, I've just gotten to this place where I'm like, I don't need to be the leanest or the strongest or like the most fit person. It doesn't mean I don't want to be in shape. Of course I do. I want to be healthy for my kids, but it's less obsession and it's less, rigid or strict about that. And so, yeah, I still eat that food because, me and my kids will travel, or we'll make, pancakes for breakfast, or we'll go out to dinner and I'll have some birthday cake at their birthday parties and things like that. Like life's too short to be eating chicken and broccoli at your kid's birthday party.
Totally, man. Yeah, we're on the same journey. Like, obviously, I was very neurotic and very obsessed for a very long time. And now at 40, 41,
yeah,
just ease up, man. Like, I love my life. I love my time with my kids. And it's about being happy and ultimately giving back, like you're saying. And I'm curious what your message is or your mission is now, as far as taking the wisdom, taking these lessons of dropping your ego. And I will want to dig into that. And giving this to your audience. You've got a very significant audience. I'm curious what the mission has become since this most recent Fit to Fat to Fit adventure.
Yeah. So my whole goal right now is to bring more awareness of the importance of operating at a place of self-love versus self-hate, and shifting people's perception of what success is in health and fitness. And so over the years, as I've done the work on myself and really kind of changed my approach to helping people transform, there's so much more of a shift on the focus on the mental and emotional side versus the physical side, which is, workouts and diet and all the physical stuff we know we were supposed to do. I think most people, when it comes to transformation, struggle more so on the mental and emotional side. And so my goal is to bring more self-awareness and helping people on that side, because I think as people become more self-aware, they learn how to love themselves and they learn how to fall in love with the process. And what happens when someone loves themselves versus hates themselves, they learn to fall in love with the process, not because they are hoping or their happiness is dependent upon results. It's more so fall in love with the process because they're worth it and they deserve to feel healthy. People think being successful in the health and fitness industry is to get the body of 5% body fat and look lean and shredded and jacked. And that's cool. But you and I both know that doesn't bring fulfillment long-term for people. People think that's what's going to make them happy. And so they make their happiness dependent on achieving that. And yes, some people can achieve that and they will achieve that, but other people will always feel less than or less valued because our society places so much value on looking a certain way. And if you don't, then you're less valued or you're less than. And people think they need that in order to be happy. And my whole goal is to help shift people's perception to operate out of a place of self-love and do these things that might seem like chores to some of us of eating healthy and exercising, but learning how to do them. Because if you love yourself, you're going to want to feel good. You're going to want to treat your body kindly and feed it good things and get good amount of sleep and manage your stress and eat real food that makes you feel good. Versus if you're always chasing for results and you make your happiness dependent upon results, it's never going to be enough. It's never going to be what you want it to be. And so my whole goal is shifting people's perception, building self-awareness, and helping them operate out of a place of self-love and taking the results out of it. Like a lot of people think, like I said, they're, one day when they get this body, then they'll be happy. Then people will love them and then they can finally love themselves. But the problem is that might not happen. You can control the input. You can't always control the output, right? For some people, they can try really hard and they might see some improvement or gains or progress. But, if their goal is to look like an Instagram model, 5% body fat, it just might not be in the cards for them. And that's okay. Like helping people realize it's okay not to be this perfect body that they think they need to be. And so my whole goal is to shift or disrupt the fitness industry and make it more about empathy, self-love, and loving yourself on the journey instead of saying, okay, one day I'll love myself or one day I'll be happy once I get this body. And that's kind of my message now, is helping people build that self-awareness. So there's a lot of focus on the mental and emotional side. So a lot of the stuff I preach or teach to people is more mindfulness approach first and foremost. So instead of focusing on diet and exercise right away, it's like, okay, what we're going to do today is we're going to make our bed. We're going to journal. We're going to do a gratitude list. We're going to learn how to meditate. We're going to learn some simple breathwork techniques. We're going to do some positive affirmations. And I feel like if people can focus and overcome those mental and emotional hurdles, and they learn how to do that, the physical stuff that we all know we're supposed to do becomes so much easier once they're in a good place mentally and emotionally and working on those things, instead of just trying to willpower your way, to a new, to a healthier lifestyle, which a lot of people just can't do. They don't know how to willpower their way to do that. And so for me, that's kind of how I've changed or focused my approach over the years. And that's because I've done this experiment twice now, and obviously done the work on myself too, to realize working in is just as important or more important than working out.
It's funny, Drew, you may not know this about me, man. When I stepped on stage in the Mr. Olympia in 2012, it was my dream, right? Is it what I wanted to do since I was 17 years old? And I walked on stage and I said I was the most insecure I ever was in my life. I accomplished my life dream, but it didn't change who I was. It everything you think it's going to become, you're like, oh, this is empty. So it then allowed me to turn that light bulb or that spotlight turn around on myself, right? And I started sending this journey within. And for the last 10 years, it's been the same thing. It's this, I don't know if you know who Jim Rohn is, that he's passed away now, but Jim Rohn's a great motivational speaker. And he said, don't set the goal to become a millionaire for the money. Set the goal for the person it makes of you to achieve it. And that's the message I'm conveying also in fitness, is like, I want everyone to train. I want everyone to be able to follow a plan, but it's not for the end result. It's the person you're becoming in the process. So there's a great parallel between what we're doing. And I think you get this, but our audience might not get it, is all these mindfulness practices that you're promoting and suggesting people do. It's not just some esoteric woo-woo suggestion to you become a more spiritual person. It's literally changing the way your brain works, right? It's changing the pathways through which your brain sends these nervous transmissions. And instead of always going through the amygdala, which is going to drive up adrenaline, it's going to go through the prefrontal cortex and allow you to be more intentional in your decision making, allow you to be more present, more conscious, and literally changing the way of life, man. So what you're doing, you're doing a phenomenal job. You're on the right track, man. It's so awesome to hear.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you're talking about it too. And this is kind of where my hope is that we shift to more of this type of approach instead of what it used to be 20, 30 years ago, where it's all about, your body composition, what your physical looks look like. And so my hope is that this will change, because the other thing I want to do is help those in the fitness industry become more empathetic and more understanding towards those who, they might have been judgmental towards before, thinking like, oh, like, why can't you just eat less food and work out? And there's this division that happens because of that. So my hope is that people be more empathetic, because I'm coming from the other side of it. I used to be in that camp where I was always in shape, thinking this is the most important thing and thinking it's easy and thinking it's simple. I want to convey to people like the old version of me and say to them, like, we have to be more empathetic, because no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And so I love that, a lot of us have a lot of knowledge of learning how to, fix people and transform people. But you could have all the knowledge in the world, but if you don't know how to relate to someone, or if they don't feel like you value them or understanding them or hearing them, they're not going to be as willing to listen to your message until they feel like you truly care about them. And that's kind of what Fit to Fit is all about, is bringing more awareness of look, it's a lot more complex than we think it is, right? Yes, there is a physical side of it, which, yes, if everyone did it on a daily basis, they would see results. But why don't they do it on a daily basis? It's probably because it's so interconnected to the mental, emotional challenges or traumas that they had in their life that they don't quite yet understand why they do what they do. And so it's important for people to, like you mentioned, meditate or journal or do a gratitude list, which rewires your brain to help you get out of those thought patterns that you've been stuck in for years or decades. And if you can learn how to do that, then, like I said, the physical stuff becomes so much easier. But until you do that, you're just going to be, spinning your wheels over and over and over again, trying this diet or trying that diet or taking this pill or doing that to hopefully fix you. But the key is to really just turn in and face your demons and do the hard work. I feel like the inner work is the hard work. Working out and eating healthy food is nothing in comparison to going to therapy and learning, what your triggers are and why they're there, and doing that work, because that work right there forces you to face your demons and forces you to get very uncomfortable. And so these things that I mentioned, making your bed, taking cold showers, meditating, journaling, positive affirmations, in my opinion, what they do is they help train your brain to become comfortable in uncomfortable situations. And if you can be more comfortable in uncomfortable situations, whether it's meditating, which is very uncomfortable for some people, or whether it's taking a cold shower for 60 seconds, which is very uncomfortable for people, then when it comes to, diet and exercise, which is also very uncomfortable, now your brain is starting to believe in itself that, hey, we can do these hard things that we didn't think we could before. And that's why this stuff that I mentioned on the mental emotional side is so important for people to do if they really want to truly transform and have it be long term. It's learning how to rewire your neural pathways, just like you mentioned.
Yeah, so true, man. That makes a lot of sense. It seems as though step one of every fitness program should be exactly what we're talking about, is this concept of like, hey, and I actually do this with my coaching, is the first month is never intense training. It's always about like, I need to increase the size of your body's stress, like what I call your stress bucket, like your ability to tolerate stress, because you're probably already stressed in so many different ways. If I just come along and negligently dump more stress on you, it's going to set you up for failure. So how then do I give you these interventions that we're talking about to ultimately just make your mind more capable of enduring those? I don't even know if it's like hard situations, but it's like unfamiliar situations, right? Like you've been in workouts, Drew, where like what you may have called hard 10 years ago, now you're like, no, it's not hard. It's just a little uncomfortable, right? But if it's unfamiliar, then it's that much more uncomfortable because you're not sure when you're going to die. You're like, this thing could crush me at any point. So your brain's going into fight or flight, and you can't repress it until you become comfortable with it. And I think it's a beautiful message, man. There's a lot of value in there.
Yeah. And like we were talking about before, surfing, for example, surfing is so uncomfortable for me because I didn't grow up doing it. And so every time I go out, like my brain it's a new experience every single time. And I kind of have to force myself to stay out there and really just get uncomfortable and let myself suck at it. But I'm showing up. I think that's the key right there, is showing up, doing your best, and it's going to be uncomfortable. But, if you do it for days, weeks, months, consistently, years, consistently, then like you said, 10 years ago, what you thought was hard, now it's like, oh, that's might be a little bit uncomfortable, but it's so much more manageable, so much easier now. I think that's the key right there is getting yourself uncomfortable in small situations at first, right? Don't just be like, okay, I'm never drinking alcohol again, even though you've been drinking for the past 30 years. I'm never touching sugar again. I'm going to work out 7 days a week, like get shredded. Like people have these ambitions and I think it's cool, but to go from 0 to 100 and maintain that is just not, probably possible for the majority of the population. And so starting out with these small baby steps and getting those things out of the way first and foremost, and having that become a habit or part of your daily life makes that other stuff so much easier. And so I love that you're talking about that. And I love that you're kind of shifting that because like I said, I feel like there's been a shift over the past 10 years where we're starting to realize there's more to transformation than just macros and calories and diets and supplements that are going to fix somebody's body. Because we all want the easy way out, right? We all want the magic pill. We all don't want to hear that we have to do the hard work. And that's the problem is like people's perception is like, it's too hard, right? We've built a lifestyle, if you live in a first world country for the most part, where every discomfort you have, we have a solution for. We have something that will make you feel comfortable in those moments. Like if you have a headache, you can take a pill. If you're cold, you can turn the heater on, or you can take a warm shower. You have a soft bed. You have a car with soft seats, and all the comforts you can imagine to take away any kind of discomfort. And now, when people are trying to transform, you're going to have to get uncomfortable. You're going to have to do some freaking hard things. And if you don't know how to, get to that point and get to that new mindset and rewire your brain like we're talking about, it's going to be really, really difficult or nearly impossible for a lot of people unless they have that inner David Goggins to push themselves to that extreme. But a lot of people don't, right? And so it's really important for me to help people realize that true transformation is more so on the mental emotional side than just the physical side. And these types of things like meditation and gratitude lists and positive affirmations for me, one, have changed my life, not in helping me lose weight, but in helping me, like, for example, I went through a divorce about 7-8 years ago, went through a breakup, like I said, a couple of years ago. And these types of life situations that happen can break a lot of people. And if you don't know how to do the work, the inner work, like I'm talking about, it's really hard to pull yourself out of these dark places. And so for me, that's why I'm trying to help people realize the importance of becoming more self-aware. And as you become more self-aware, you're more in control of your life. There's a great quote from Anthony DeMello, I think, who said, what you are aware of, you're in control of. And what you're not aware of controls you. And I think so many people are stuck in that place of lacking self-awareness where they don't even know why they do. Well, they don't even know like their triggers and what triggers them. They just know how to react to those triggers, where sometimes it's food, sometimes it's alcohol, sometimes it's drugs, whatever it is. We distract ourselves from the emotional pain of life with some type of substance or escape, if you will. And we don't really understand why we're doing what we're doing. And then we eat the cake or we drink the alcohol and we think, man, why did I do that? Like, why can't I just, be disciplined? And if you don't learn how to do the inner work to figure it out, you'll never be in control of it because you're not really aware of it yet. Once you become aware of it, now it's easier to control and easier to manage because you're understanding why you do what you do. And so I think that's kind of my hope, is to help people build that self-awareness so that they can be more in control of their life, instead of just kind of floating around unaware of why they do what they do. And then they're stuck in this reactivity type of mindset where they just react to the triggers and the stress. And they're like, fuck it, give me a drink, give me some beer and some pizza and then drown your sorrows. And then, nothing ever really gets fixed. So hopefully that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense. And society's kind of built that way, isn't it? From the time you're a child, you're not really exposed to any adversity. You're just kind of coddled and everything's easy. And then you get to, say, your teenage years or early 20s, never having been exposed to something that's really physically or mentally taxing. And all of a sudden the world goes, hey, now you got to figure shit out on your own. And people are like, I can't do this. I'm overwhelmed. I'm depressed. I'm anxious. Give me a pill. And it's just further muting of the sensation, which then removes us even further from our body, doesn't it? It's alcohol, it's Xanax, it's all these things that are just this constant muting of, the pain that ultimately we're supposed to be facing or we should be facing. And part of my mission is being a great dad and then passing the message on to other dads and moms to say, hey, you know what? Coddling your kids isn't doing them a favor. Like intentionally exposing them to hard things in a safe way is an essential part of life, right? So I think that's part of it is like, if my kids are going to get to their 18th birthday, never having been exposed to something that's difficult, and then all of a sudden I kick them out of the house and go, hey, go to university or college and you're on your own. How do you expect them to possibly succeed, right? They need to learn independence. They need to learn that they can do it on their own progressively. And that puts a lot of onus on the parent, doesn't it, to be intentional about what you're subjecting them to, which is, again, a huge amount of responsibility that most parents may not be able to handle.
Yeah, I think that's great. That's great advice right there. And I think I saw you have two kids, and you posted about a book you read a little while ago. I can't remember the name of it, but I think for me, like, getting your kids to do hard things is so valuable. But I think for me, the hard part is, like, I have two girls that are preteens, and we struggle a lot with getting them to do what I want them to do. Cause I'm like, this is going to be better for you if you do this. But then they just start getting to the age where they're like, no, I know better. I know what I need to do. But here's the thing, that causes a lot of stress in your life as a parent. I think you understand this. All the parents out there understand this. Like, dealing with kids, especially during this adolescent phase where they're kind of becoming another version of themselves, is really, really hard. And at least it's been hard for me. It almost broke me about less than a year ago. I had to take a break from social media because just going through some hard things with kids is way harder than I thought it was going to be, especially as your girls become young women. Man, it's intense, and it throws you for a loop. At least for me, it was really, really hard, where I had to take a break from social media. I had to tell my team, like, hey guys, I need to take some time off to, like, recenter. I was, like, really depressed, and I didn't think it would affect me that much, but this is what I'm talking about. These types of life situations happen in people's lives, and we don't know what's going on in someone's life of why they're struggling. Like, for me, I didn't go to this place of, like, gorging myself and feeding myself with food, but I definitely numbed myself with other things or other escapes, whether it's social media or movies or whatever it is. There's lots of things that we can escape with, but there's things that happen in people's lives where fitness might not be their number one priority during that phase of their life. And I think that's okay to realize that, during hard times in our life, like, we need to be compassionate towards ourselves and realize that, if we're trying to be strict with a diet, we're trying to be strict with our, exercise routine, like you said, that adds more stress in your life. And if you're already stressed out to the max with other life situations, there's not a whole lot left of you, because you're just like, your cortisol's through the roof all day, every day, and eventually you're going to burn out. And so finding ways to, bring those cortisol levels down, like we mentioned, meditation or journaling or just going for a walk out in nature, man, that right there is so huge. And I think people don't know these tools yet. And that's kind of why I want to bring these type of tools into the health and fitness industry, so people can better manage these types of life situations where they don't just go 100% on and 100% off, and then they just gain 50 pounds back and just, like, stop exercising completely and just everything goes to shit. I think if people had these tools that you're talking about, I think it would be very helpful. But we just don't talk about it enough in the fitness industry to give these tools to people. They think, okay, I need to go to a therapist, which for some people they might think that's woo-woo or taboo or whatever. But, like, you have to be open to new tools, because what worked for you before might not be working for you now. And that's one lesson I've learned, is you got to be open to new tools that can help you navigate, new territory or new experiences in your life.
Yeah, man, a little perspective on your daughters. And, like, I don't know the circumstance, but I'm going through something very similar. As with growing up in a divorced family, they could be receiving mixed messages as far as values, right? Your ex-wife may value one thing and you may value something different. And so if the family was together, or if you were able to inculcate habits, right? Daily habits of health, and, like example being my kids and I walk every morning and we have a healthy breakfast and we do meditations and breathing before we do every meal. And I'm inculcating those habits. So by the time we get to teenage years, it's no longer me having to ask. It's just part of who they are. Whereas as a child, if they're getting conflicting messages, they're just like, I don't have to do this at mom's, but I have to do it at dad's. And now it almost feels like a punishment, right? And I'm going through something similar where when I ask them to do stuff, whereas in the past it would have been very easy, now it's like, oh, dad's punishing us, right? That's a hard situation. Imagine how hard it is for them, right? Like, you're trying to do something good for them, but they just think you're trying to punish them because it's hard. And it's not hard. It's just not a habit. And I think it's the uncertain values, like the flip-flopping of values, can become a very confusing place for your daughters, man. And I'm not sure what they're going through. Like I said, I don't know your situation, but maybe just like sitting down and having a conversation about why this is important and why we value this. And everyone values things differently, and they can ultimately decide on their values. But your values are this, and this is why you think it's important. That may make the circumstance maybe a little more tolerable for them, right? You separately. Yeah. It's a challenge, Ben.
It is. And I think learning how to have uncomfortable conversations, is the key to overcoming
without emotion.
Yeah, without emotion. That's the hard part. It's so hard not to get emotional. That's the thing. Like everything that I do, whether it's me being a parent or running multiple businesses, is an opportunity to do the work on myself, right? Because everything is a reflection of how you see yourself. And so if there's something about your kids that you're struggling with, or that's causing you to be triggered or react, that's a good opportunity to look at within and say, okay, why is this bothering me so much? What is it about me that maybe I haven't seen yet, or I can work on, because this right here is causing a lot of stress. And it's not always about the external things that are happening in our life. It's how we react to those things. And so learning, why we're triggered is super important. So the work never ends. Just like working out and eating healthy and living a healthy lifestyle never ends. It's not like you get 5% body fat and then you're done. Like you just stop, right? It's continually working and growing and finding new ways to navigate new territory, like I mentioned. And so it's one of those things. Like it's just part of life. Like this is an adventure, this is a journey. And if you look at life happening for you instead of to you, you'll be a lot happier. It doesn't mean that the pain's going to go away. It doesn't mean like it's not going to suck. It's still going to suck. But if you can finally get to the point where you can breathe a little bit and say, okay, what is this trying to teach me? Like, what is this here for to teach me? What can I learn from this? Versus like, why is this happening to me? Why me? Like, God sucks. My parents suck. Like, this sucks. That sucks. And you blame everyone else. You stay in that victim mentality mindset. Then you're going to be stuck there, and you're going to be very, very unhappy. And that's where you'll probably go to numb and distract yourself from the pain. And that can lead to a very unhealthy lifestyle. And so I think if you can, shift your perception of looking at hard situations as happening for you instead of to you, then I feel like you can, get out of that situation, get out of that victim mindset and not stay stuck there forever. But I think the other hard part is we try and run away from pain. Anytime we feel pain, we we don't like it. And so we distract ourselves, we numb ourselves, we run away from it. But I believe it was Rumi that said the cure for pain is in the pain. And so instead of running away from the pain, face the pain and say, okay, what are you here to teach me? What am I supposed to learn from this? I think that's how we grow and progress in this life. And I think that's a great attitude to have, no matter how hard times get. There's definitely times like where I had to check out and like it was too hard for me, but that doesn't mean I gave up. It doesn't mean I didn't do the work. I just had to do the work. It took me 7 or 8 months to pull myself out of that, of continually doing the work on myself. So it doesn't mean that you're going to be pain free and you're not going to experience suffering. You're still going to experience the suffering, but let yourself feel the pain, let yourself be uncomfortable in the pain. And then once you're ready to do the work and figure out, why this pain is in your life. And then I feel like at that point, then you can start to pull yourself out of that. But I think a lot of people get stuck there and they stay bitter and they stay angry. And I don't blame them. I know that feeling of like not wanting to do the work or not wanting to build more self-awareness. Because as you become aware, you become responsible now, yeah. And that's really hard pill for people to swallow.
True. There's a lesson I learned during my bodybuilding career, and I don't know how I picked it up or why I started doing it, but I've often been quoted as saying, in the deepest depths of your hardest hour, smile, or in the deepest depths of your hardest set, smile. And it's something I started doing early on in my bodybuilding career. And I liken it like coming up to the edge of a roller coaster where you're just about to go off that first cliff, and you can tighten up and panic, or you can put a big smile on your face and go, you know what? I'm strapped in. I'm going down no matter whether I like it or not. I'm going to enjoy this and put a big smile on my face, right? And so now when you're facing obstacles, and Ram Dass, if you've read Ram Dass, it's definitely worth a read. He speaks about his baby gurus, his little gurus, right? So every time he would experience a circumstance that stressed him out or made him angry or made him emotional, he would smile and say, I see you, guru. You've come back to teach me. So these little gurus pop up everywhere in your life, and our kids are our best little gurus, aren't they? And you I see you, guru, and you're here to teach me. And thank you for my lesson, guru. So now rather than saying, I don't know if I can handle this, you go, here's a lesson for me to learn. Thank you, guru. So now when I encounter those obstacles and those huge challenges that sometimes I have no idea how I'm going to get through this. Just put a smile on your face, man. You're like, all right, I guess I got to figure this out. And eventually you start to believe in your own ability to follow through. Because eventually, like when you take that smile and you go, I have no idea how I'm going to figure it out, but I'm going to figure it out. That mindset just seems to work. Like I've really taken on a completely new perspective on things that are hard. And I think that's maybe an interesting thing to add to your tool belt and just like, thank you and bring it on. Right.
Yeah. I think that's great advice also for people that are, going through, a transformation journey where they're going to hit plateaus. They're going to hit, hard phases of that where they might not be happy with the results. And so I think that's another great lesson of like doing the work on yourself of like, okay, I'm doing all the inputs, I'm putting in all the effort, but the output isn't there where I want it to be. And that's a great lesson for us to learn. Like you can't control what you can't control, right? You can't control these uncontrollable things, but you can control the way you show up. You can control, how you show up and when you show up. That's all you can control. And if you stay within that realm and realize that you're doing this for yourself, then I feel like, in the long run, you're gonna be a lot happier, more fulfilled with where you're at now, even as imperfect as you might be. You might not be where you want to be physically, even though you're doing all this work, but I feel like you'll be more fulfilled on that journey. And then your happiness isn't dependent on like, okay, one day, then I'll be happy. You're happy because you're showing up every single day. And like you said, I love that approach. I love that mentality to just smile and say, okay, I see you.
And it's the idea of life as a game, right? The first time you played Monopoly, you didn't win. But if you take the mindset of like, oh shit, I suck, I'm not good at this game, like you're not going to come back. So it's like, well, I guess I need to do better next time, right? So if the first time you set out on that transformation journey, you don't get where you want to go, the mindset is, well, I'm going to do better next time. And that's all you can do, right? It's like, you don't win the first time you play Monopoly, right? You got to play multiple times before you become the Monopoly champion. Or it's just another game. Like every little aspect of your life could be considered, be looked at as a game that you just haven't played enough times yet. Keep trying, or find someone who's really good at the process to lead you, which is, coming back to what you're doing. So I'm curious what the aspects of your business are right now, Drew. Like you said, you've got, leading multiple businesses. How are you giving back? How are you helping people with this wisdom?
Yeah. So, over the years of 10, 11 years, I've been doing this, which to be totally honest with you, Ben, a lot of people don't know this, but like I had a full-time job in the medical field when this first happened, and I was doing personal training part-time. So I didn't know any of this was going to become what it is today. And so it's been quite a journey, quite a ride over the past like 10, 11 years of creating this business. And then, where it's at today, I feel very blessed, very fortunate. And I think the biggest thing for me that switched for me was in the beginning, it was like, okay, this is my career, this is what I do to make money. But now it's my mission. It's part of me. Like your mess becomes your message. And I feel like for me, the big switch that happened in my business was once I showed up authentically and started becoming vulnerable with my audience, that's where I felt like it really took off. That's where I like Brené Brown talks about stepping into the arena, being the man in the arena. For me, that was really, really hard. And I think for me, that's kind of where I've been able to develop this business into what it is today. So what it looks like today is, of course, I have a lot of digital content, digital programs that people can download, and the hook or the giving people what they think they want of, okay, here's this program, 60-day program, you can do this, blah, blah, blah. They'll see the meal plans, they'll see the workouts. Which is what they think they want, but then they start consuming my content where I'm talking about empathy and self-love and self-awareness and mindfulness and meditation and positive affirmation. So like, wait a second, I thought we were transforming our bodies. What's going on here? So a lot of the programs that you'll see sprinkled or mixed in, that mindfulness stuff, but if I lead with like a 30-day self-love program for men, let's be honest, that's not going to sell as much as like a 30-day get shredded program. So I think it's been really cool to start to sprinkle these things into these programs where people get both the physical side that they need, right? They know they need, but then also the mental and emotional stuff. So they start to develop that self-love and that self-awareness. And that's where it leads to true lasting change. So I also have 2 books that I've written, Fit to Fit and Complete Keto, built a supplement line called Complete Wellness. And just recently I launched a meal delivery service called F2 meals. And right now it's just a keto line of meals because that's kind of what, I focus on right now. It's just, is keto, but, I don't do keto myself all the time, but it's a big part of, what my audience wants. And so I just recently launched that a couple months ago. I'm working on an apparel line, and as of right now, that's it. But other than I also do speaking engagements on stage and stuff like that, where I share this message. I share a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, and my hope is to one day be able to do retreats out here in Hawaii. So stay tuned for that.
Nice, man. And where's the best place for our audience to track you down? Social media, where do you want to send them to get some of your content?
Yeah, super simple. Fit, fat, fit is my social media handle on all the platforms. And then my website is Fit to Fat to Fit. My first book is Fit to Fat to Fit. And my podcast is the Fit to Fat to Fit Experience. And so it's all the same. So it should be pretty simple for people to find me.
Nice, man. I think you've got an incredible footprint on there. You've got an incredible business, incredible mission, man. I love having you on. Thanks for being here, brother. And thanks for what you do.
Yeah, Ben, my pleasure, dude. I had a great conversation. Thank you so much.
All right, ladies and gents, boys and girls, thank you very much for being here on the Muscle Intelligence Podcast. I hope that we continue to bring you incredible guests. We always try to find a balance between people who are studying it in the lab and then ultimately applying it in the trenches. What I often say, the people who come on this podcast are the people who begin where everyone else ends, people who are really pushing what they do to the limit. And Drew is definitely no exception, adding 60 pounds of unwanted fat. And if you look at his pictures on his social media, you'll see it was a lot of fat, and he did an incredible job pulling it back off, and he still stays in really good shape. Now, I highly suggest you guys head over to Drew's social media and follow him there. You can find him at Fit to Fat to Fit. You can also find his podcast at Fit to Fat to Fit, and his website also Fit to Fat to Fit. Drew, thanks for being here. I appreciate what you do. You're an incredible man and an incredible dad. And also thank you to our sponsors today, Bioptimizers, a long time sponsor of the podcast, because they keep coming back because I believe in the product. I've been using this product for, it's got to be about 5 to 7 years now, consistently using enzymes. And enzymes are one of these things that I suggest that everyone uses in their day-to-day routine. If you're over 35, usually after the age of 35, or if you've been abusing your body in your 20s and 30s, a really good way to ensure your body can actually extrapolate the nutrients you eat and not feel bloated all the time from food is to ensure you're consuming some type of digestive enzymes. The highest quality ones I've been able to find so far, or of the highest quality ones, are Bioptimizers Masszymes. That's BIOPTIMIZERS.com, and use the code MUSCLE10 to get hooked up with 10% off. Thanks for being here, ladies and gents. Appreciate you very much. If you're not already subscribed to the podcast, do so right now so you can never miss a podcast. We have so many great things coming at you to help you build muscle, lose fat, feel amazing. And now we're adding this longevity piece to the puzzle, which I just love, as I know this journey for me is about living long so I can spend time with my angels and impact this world in a greater way. Gents, we need more amazing men like you who are inspiring, who are training hard, who are getting after it and leading from the front. Thanks for being here. I appreciate you. And I will see you again really, really soon on the Muscle Intelligence Podcast. Ben Pakulski, out.
Thank you so much for tuning into Muscle Intelligence. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to share it with at least one person you know. Make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an episode. This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Ben Pakulski and the producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.